Tell me, what is wealth to a mind that cannot rule itself? You have seen men rise and fall, not because the world turned against them, but because their own minds did. You have witnessed the strange paradox of human ambition, how the same fire that drives one to greatness burns another into ashes. And so the question returns again and again, like a whisper in the dark corridors of the mind, what does it mean to be rich? Not in gold, not in numbers, not in the applause of men, but in mastery, in calm, in control. The truth is not buried in books nor hidden in vaults. It is seated quietly inside you, behind your impulses, behind your hungers. The Stoics knew this. Napoleon Hill sensed it in the pulse of his philosophy. Both gazed into the same abyss and saw the same law written across it. Before you can possess the world, you must possess yourself. Riches without self-control are only gilded cages. You may hold the key, but the prisoner remains you. The Stoic does not seek wealth to escape the burden of effort. He seeks wealth as a test, as a mirror of his discipline. He does not chase gold, he refines the mind that magnetizes it. He understands that fortune is not a goddess to be worshipped, but a force to be mastered, and she bows only to those who are unmoved by her seductions. Every empire begins not with a conquest of land, but with a conquest of thought. Every fortune is born not from luck, but from law, invisible, psychological, immutable. Napoleon Hill called it definiteness of purpose. Marcus Aurelius called it control of opinion. They were speaking of the same kingdom, the dominion of consciousness. To be rich is not to have more, it is to be more composed, more deliberate, more aligned with a deeper rhythm of cause and effect. You must understand, the universe does not reward noise. It rewards order. The same way gravity pulls a stone to earth, the law of the mind pulls reality to belief. To the Stoic, that belief must be rational, unshaken by emotion. To Hill, it must be passionate, vibrating with faith. Between these two lies the secret, passion under discipline, desire under command, the balance between flame and steel. Think of Epictetus, born a slave yet freer than emperors. They could chain his body but never his thoughts. And think of Hill, born poor yet richer than kings in the depth of his understanding. Both men lived on different timelines but in the same psychological dimension. Both knew that true power is invisible, internal, and self-created. You do not rise in the world by fighting circumstances, you rise by mastering the mind that perceives them. Wealth, therefore, is not the accumulation of possessions, but the calibration of perception. You do not attract abundance by grasping at it, you become abundant by removing the inner poverty of fear and reaction. The Stoic trains the mind to be indifferent to loss so he may act without hesitation. Hill trains the mind to be obsessed with vision so he may act without doubt. The mastery of life lies in uniting these forces. Clarity without apathy, ambition without frenzy. Imagine this, a man wakes before dawn. His world is quiet. He sits before a window as the first light bleeds across the horizon. His thoughts are precise, disciplined. He does not chase ideas, he directs them. He knows that every emotion is a servant, every doubt a test. He writes his purpose not as a wish, but as a command to his subconscious. His stillness is not laziness, it is alignment. His calm is not resignation, it is control. This is the secret posture of power. This is Stoic wealth. Napoleon Hill once wrote that every man who masters himself becomes a magnet to opportunity. But what he left unsaid is that opportunity respects silence. It approaches only those who do not beg for it, who do not tremble when it delays. The Stoic knows this well. He waits not idly, but intelligently. He plants the seed and does not tear it from the ground to see if it grows. He trusts the unseen mechanism of natural law, just as Hill trusted the mind's capacity to materialize thought. Control is not suppression, it is direction. You do not extinguish desire, you refine it, you sculpt it until it is pure, free from the pollution of fear and vanity. The Stoics would call it virtue. Hill would call it burning desire. The world misunderstands both. It sees the Stoic as cold, the achiever as greedy. But both, when united, reveal the higher path, the fire that does not burn, the calm that does not fade. There comes a moment in every human life when one must choose between being driven by emotion or being directed by principle. That is the dividing line between mediocrity and mastery. The poor man reacts, the rich man responds. The poor man chases, the rich man attracts. The poor man fears the market's fall. The rich man reads its rhythm. Wealth is not luck. It is psychological architecture. You are not rewarded for what you do. You are rewarded for how consciously you do it. And consciousness demands sacrifice, the sacrifice of impulse, the surrender of comfort, the discipline of focus. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Napoleon Hill echoed, "What the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." Same truth, two languages. One calls it reason, the other faith. One trains detachment, the other devotion. Together they build a man who is both visionary and unbreakable. Look at the modern world. It drowns in noise. Everyone speaks of success. Few understand silence. Everyone desires abundance. Few have the stillness to receive it. The Stoic and the success philosopher both know this. To hear the call of greatness, one must quiet the internal chaos. The universe does not whisper to the restless. It communicates with those who have mastered their emotions, their fears, their reactions. There is a war inside every ambitious mind, a war between fire and restraint, between wanting more and being enough. The untrained mind burns itself trying to conquer the world. The disciplined mind conquers itself and finds the world following. For every empire that rose from ambition, thousands crumbled from arrogance. Wealth without virtue is decay. Power without peace is collapse. Do not misunderstand Stoicism. It does not tell you to reject wealth. It tells you to remain unmoved by it, to hold it like a sword, steady, sharp, but never an idol. The Stoic does not say, do not desire. He says, desire what is within your control. And within your control lies your discipline, your thoughts, your focus, the invisible engines that produce every visible result. The untrained man prays for luck. The trained man prepares for law. Hill called it the law of success, that invisible thread connecting thought, faith, and persistence. The Stoic would call it the logos, the rational order of the universe. Both speak of alignment, that when a man's mind, heart, and action vibrate in harmony with universal law, reality obeys. Wealth is not created, it is aligned. Consider how the Stoic endures failure. He sees no tragedy, only feedback. He adjusts, observes, learns without emotional collapse. Napoleon Hill taught the same through persistence. Every adversity carries within it the seed of equal or greater benefit. Two philosophies, one spine, resilience. To the Stoic, resilience is peace. To the achiever, it is progress. To you, it must become nature. The moment you stop reacting and start observing, wealth begins. Because wealth is not the consequence of effort alone, it is the child of awareness. Your mind is a field, every thought a seed. If you plant impatience, you harvest chaos. If you plant gratitude and discipline, you harvest results. The Stoic reminds you you are responsible for what you plant. Hill reminds you what you plant you will inevitably reap. Between them lies the eternal law. Think deliberately, act decisively, detach completely. Imagine two men, one desires wealth but is enslaved by his emotions. He celebrates wildly when he wins, despairs bitterly when he loses. His success is unstable, his peace conditional. The second man also desires wealth but moves through life with quiet intensity. He plans, persists, adapts, unmoved by applause or failure. His wealth grows slowly, silently, but permanently. The first man chases money. The second attracts mastery. And mastery attracts everything. The Stoic seeks control over the mind. The success philosopher seeks influence over reality. But control of mind is influence over reality. They are not two paths, they are one. The world outside bends to the temperature of the mind within. The colder your calm, the sharper your precision. The steadier your focus, the greater your magnetism. Wealth flows not to those who run after it, but to those who have become the kind of person wealth naturally serves. To get rich, one must think beyond money. Money is merely a symbol, a physical echo of your internal order. The universe mirrors your psychology in material form. If your mind is chaotic, your finances will follow. If your mind is disciplined, your environment will align. That is why both Hill and the Stoics preach self-command as the root of fortune. You cannot manage wealth if you cannot manage emotion. You cannot hold power if you cannot hold peace. In this silent truth lies the ultimate paradox of success. To gain control over the external world, you must relinquish the illusion of control over it. The Stoic surrenders to what he cannot change. Hill teaches to shape what he can. Together they reveal the perfect equation: accept what is beyond you, command what is within you. That is the architecture of calm ambition. You will never be rich if your emotions dictate your strategy. You will never be powerful if fear owns your focus. The Stoic teaches that emotion is the fog that blinds reason. Hill teaches that faith is the fire that burns through that fog. Together, they give you sight, clarity that is both rational and radiant. So the next time you dream of wealth, do not ask, how can I get more? Ask instead, how can I become more? The man who becomes more disciplined, more focused, more serene, inevitably attracts more. It is law, not luck. The rich are not chosen, they are shaped. And the forge of that shaping is the silent battle within. The world may measure success by numbers, but nature measures it by order. The disciplined mind radiates an energy that no market can quantify. You have felt it in the presence of someone unshaken, someone calm under pressure, someone who speaks little but moves mountains. That is Stoic wealth, invisible authority born of inner alignment. Ask yourself now, are you governed by desire or do you govern it? Are you led by fear or do you lead through faith? Till your emotions obey your mind, your money will obey your emotions. The Stoic path and the Hill philosophy converge. At one gate, the mastery of inner cause. The rest, all of it, is effect. And when you finally understand this, when you stop fighting circumstances and start directing thought, the world becomes strangely quiet. Not because it has changed, but because you have. You are no longer disturbed by delay, no longer intoxicated by success. You act, you believe, you persist without frenzy. You are no longer chasing wealth, you are expressing it. That is when the universe begins to yield. Opportunities begin to arrive with uncanny precision. People begin to appear who mirror your new vibration. And you realize that riches were never about money, they were about mastery. You did not become wealthy to prove power. You became powerful to manifest wealth. This is where the Stoic's calm meets the achiever's fire, where silence meets strategy, where detachment meets desire. It is not a contradiction, it is the law of balance. And in that balance lies everything you have ever sought. There comes a moment in the pursuit of greatness when effort no longer feels like motion but like meditation, when persistence ceases to be a struggle and becomes a rhythm. The Stoics called this the alignment of will with nature. Hill called it the state of faith. But in truth, it is the same rare equilibrium, when the heart's fire burns without consuming the mind's calm. You must understand the anatomy of emotion if you wish to master success. The world praises emotion as passion, but few realize how easily passion mutates into panic. The undisciplined emotion turns vision into chaos. The disciplined emotion turns thought into gold. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that the mind becomes invincible the moment it ceases to complain about anything outside its control. Hill wrote that the man who can hold a vision in his mind with unwavering belief will see the universe rearrange itself to bring it forth. Imagine then what happens when you merge these truths, when your vision is steady and your heart untroubled. That is the state of divine efficiency. Emotion, like wealth, is a tool. It is neither good nor evil. It is energy, neutral and obedient to the one who commands it. But emotion without discipline is a servant turned tyrant. It pulls you toward temporary ecstasies and drags you through needless despair. The Stoic observes it, names it, and lets it pass. The success philosopher directs it, channels it toward his definite purpose. The one who combines both becomes unstoppable, unbothered by chaos, yet burning with purpose. Ask yourself, when adversity strikes, do you lose your rhythm or do you turn pain into pattern? Because every external blow is a rehearsal for mastery, every obstacle a mirror reflecting your current level of self-control. The Stoic does not curse difficulty, he thanks it. It is the weight that builds the inner muscle. The achiever does not flee from failure, he studies it. It is the data that calibrates the compass. The universe is not emotional. It is mathematical, ordered, and exact. Yet it responds with eerie sensitivity to the vibration of your inner state. This is the paradox. Though reality is logical, it moves through energy. And your emotion is energy. To manifest wealth, you must feel without attachment. To attract success, you must believe without obsession. You must stand in the still center between desire and detachment, between faith and patience. Napoleon Hill said the subconscious mind will translate into its physical equivalent any thought that is given to it in faith and emotion. But he did not mean the frantic emotion of desperation. He meant the serene conviction that the Stoic cultivates. Faith is not excitement, it is still certainty. True faith is not loud, it is silent, immovable, absolute. That is why the Stoic never argues with the storm. He knows that to resist nature is to weaken himself. Instead, he aligns. The successful man does the same. When markets fall, when plans break, when people disappoint, he adjusts but never abandons his vision. He does not whine because he knows complaint is a declaration of weakness. Every complaint feeds the illusion of chaos. Every act of composure restores command. You want to get rich? Learn to remain calm when everyone else trembles. That is when clarity becomes a weapon. In the fog of panic, the calm mind sees opportunity. The Stoic sits in silence while others shout. The achiever studies while others fear. Because both understand that emotion is not a signal to react. It is a signal to observe. The difference between average and extraordinary is not intelligence, it is emotional strategy. The average man allows feelings to dictate focus. The extraordinary man uses reason to guide feeling. He chooses his state deliberately. This is the essence of the law of success and the core of Stoicism alike. Deliberate control of internal conditions to influence external outcomes. Persistence, then, is not merely repetition, it is emotional constancy. It is the refusal to let mood alter mission. To persist does not mean to strain. It means to remain steady in the vibration of belief, even when results delay. The Stoic calls it endurance. Hill calls it faith. Both are facets of the same gem. Consistency of inner power. There is a rhythm to creation, and the wise learn its tempo. The impatient man digs up his seeds. The disciplined man waters them daily, knowing nature's clock cannot be rushed. Every great fortune was once invisible, a thought, a vision, a seed beneath the soil of time. The Stoic endures its waiting. The achiever feeds it with faith. Together they manifest the harvest. Now imagine this scene. A man sitting in his small office, plans scattered, money low, hope flickering. He feels the tremor of failure approaching like thunder. Yet he remembers his discipline. He straightens his spine, he closes his eyes. He breathes not to escape, but to return. He sees in his mind the image of what he desires. He holds it, not as fantasy, but as fact awaiting timing. He whispers no complaint, sheds no tear. He works again. Slowly, deliberately, unshaken, days pass, months. His results do not bloom overnight, but something shifts. A new calm overtakes him. Opportunities begin to notice him. People begin to trust him. His work deepens in quality. His mind sharpens. His circumstances, like obedient soldiers, begin to align. This is not luck. This is law, the reward of internal order. Because you do not attract wealth through chance, you synchronize with it through vibration. And your vibration is the byproduct of emotion. The Stoic keeps that vibration pure through detachment. Hill amplifies it through desire. When combined, they produce a signal so coherent that reality has no choice but to respond. To the untrained, such talk sounds mystical, but there is nothing mystical about discipline. The mind is a transmitter. Emotion is frequency. Belief is programming. The universe is responsive to structure. That is why every philosophy that endures teaches order, from the Stoics to the sages to the modern masters. Chaos is noise, law is signal. Align with law and you transcend luck. The most dangerous enemy of success is not failure, it is reaction. The Stoic neutralizes it by stillness. The achiever neutralizes it by focus. When combined, they create a man who moves only when movement serves purpose. His silence terrifies the emotional, because it reflects their lack of control. His calm presence alters rooms, because it radiates a command deeper than words. He is no. Trying to appear strong, he simply is. Understand this, emotion unmastered is poverty in disguise. It makes you impulsive in spending, impatient in strategy, desperate in relationships. The Stoic removes emotion's claws. Hill gives emotion wings. You must learn both. how to strip emotion of its power to enslave and use it to energize creation, you will find that every external limitation mirrors an internal one. The man who cannot control anger cannot control negotiation. The one who cannot delay gratification cannot accumulate wealth. The one who cannot forgive cannot think freely. Stoicism does not numb emotion, it refines it until it serves virtue. Napoleon Hill does not worship desire, he directs it until it becomes will. So the question becomes not how do I make more, but how do I become less reactive? Because every act of reactivity is an act of surrender. Every moment of composure is a declaration of power. Wealth, after all, is not an accident of birth, it is the residue of consistent composure. The Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius ruled not by noise, but by note. Short meditations written to himself, reminders of control. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. That single line reveals the secret of unshakable focus, awareness of mortality. When you remember that time is finite, distraction loses its charm. Hill understood this too, that urgency born of purpose turns ordinary lives into extraordinary legacies. The Stoic removes dependency on outcomes. The achiever defines outcomes with precision. You must learn to aim like Hill, but remain unmoved like Aurelius. Desire with direction, act with detachment. That is the architecture of serenity and success coexisting. There is a silence behind mastery, a calm so deep it radiates authority. You can feel it in those who have built empires without losing peace. They do not rush. They do not prove. They simply act in alignment with their principles, and results obey. The Stoic calls this living according to nature. Hill calls it tuning the mind to the infinite intelligence. Call it whatever you wish, it is the same truth. Alignment breeds manifestation. Emotionally, the journey is paradoxical. The more you detach, the more abundance flows. The less you crave, the more magnetized you become. Because craving signals lack. Calm signals completion. And the universe mirrors what you are, not what you plead for. That is why both the Stoic and the success philosopher teach gratitude. Not as morality, but as energy coherence. Gratitude stabilizes vibration. It trains the subconscious to see wealth as natural, not distant. Most people destroy their potential by emotional inconsistency. They begin with fire and end with fatigue. They let temporary doubt erase long-term destiny. The Stoic trains endurance. He remains the same under praise or insult. Hill trains persistence. He keeps the goal vivid when evidence disappears. Together they forge the rarest character on earth, the man who cannot be broken, only sharpened. Understand that wealth does not belong to the cleverest, but to the calmest. Intelligence without discipline breeds overthinking. Strategy without serenity breeds burnout. Only when reason and emotion merge under control does clarity manifest results. That is why the ancient sages meditated before action, not to escape, but to align. The Stoic does not fear loss, he prepares for it. Hill does not fear risk, he calculates it. The fusion of these two temperaments creates what might be called strategic serenity, the ability to move decisively with peace intact. This is not the calm of passivity, it is the calm of readiness. You must learn to see emotion as weather. Let it come, let it pass, but never let it decide. Your direction. The Stoic studies the weather, the achiever builds in it. He knows that storms are temporary and laws eternal. Every failure is temporary weather. Every victory is temporary sunlight. What matters is the builder's consistency. Think of all those who built fortunes and lost them to impulse, the athlete undone by ego, the trader blinded by greed, the leader destroyed by rage. In every case, emotion was the assassin. The Stoic avoids this by introspection. He rehearses death, loss, and failure in the mind, so that when they come, they find him ready. Hill trains visualization of success so vivid that when it arrives, he is equally ready. Both mental rehearsals forge immunity, one against pain, the other against fear. This immunity is your greatest asset. Emotional immunity transforms uncertainty into strategy. You stop reacting and start observing. You stop fearing and start calculating. Wealth then becomes not a chase, but an equation. There is a discipline behind persistence. It is not about constant action, but constant direction. Every day, one aligned act, one deliberate step compounds. The Stoic says, do what is right, not what feels right. Hill says, do what must be done until it becomes effortless. In that overlap lies mastery. Repetition without resentment, effort without exhaustion. If you wish to be rich, do not pursue intensity, pursue consistency. The flame that burns slow lasts longest. The mind that remains steady builds unbreakable empires. For every man who achieved greatness through frenzy, 1,000 collapsed through fatigue. But the Stoic achiever hybrid endures. He walks in silence while others sprint in panic. And one day, as the dust settles, he is the only one left standing, calm, patient, inevitable. Let emotion serve vision, not sabotage it. Let persistence serve principle, not ego, because all creation, all weal, all art, all empire begins in an unseen vibration. The Stoic purifies it, Hill amplifies it. Together they awaken the highest version of man, disciplined in soul, daring in ambition, calm in execution. That is the man the universe enriches, not because he begs, but because he belongs. There is a silence beneath thought, a place where reality begins to form before it ever touches the visible world. This is where the Stoic and the success philosopher meet, though they name it differently. The Stoic calls it reason, the divine logos, the quiet architecture of order. Napoleon Hill calls it the subconscious mind, the medium between thought and matter, the channel through which faith translates imagination into form. But they are both describing the same invisible engine, that sacred equilibrium between consciousness and creation, between mind and manifestation. To understand this law is to stand at the threshold of power, for nothing is created until it is first disciplined in thought. The mind is not merely an observer of life, it is its architect. Every emotion, every belief, every repetition of thought etches patterns into the subconscious, and those patterns become behavior, which becomes circumstance. The Stoic understood this long before science confirmed it, that perception is not passive but creative. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, wrote Marcus Aurelius. Hill simply refined that principle for the modern age, teaching that whatever dominates your consciousness will eventually dominate your experience. Between the meditations of the emperor and the philosophy of the success teacher lies the same commandment. Guard the gates of the mind, for they are the gates of destiny. The subconscious does not argue, it obeys. It has no sense of humor, no distinction between real and imagined, no filter for doubt. It accepts what the conscious mind repeats, especially when charged with emotion. That is why belief matters more than logic, and discipline more than talent. The Stoic disciplines perception, Hill disciplines belief. Together they reveal that reality is the reflection of whatever your inner order tolerates. You cannot be chaotic within and orderly without. You cannot harbor resentment and attract abundance. You cannot nurture fear and expect fortune. The subconscious is the most loyal servant you will ever command, but it serves only one master at a time. And so the question becomes, what are you teaching your subconscious to believe? Every complaint, every worry, every indulgence of anxiety is a lesson you give it, a signal that says, this is what I prefer. It does not judge, it creates. That is why the Stoic forbids emotional indulgence, not because it is morally wrong, but because it is psychologically expensive. Every undisciplined emotion imprints disorder. Every calm acceptance imprints strength. The Stoic's calm is not passive, it is programming. He is writing order into the deepest layers of the self. Hill does the same through autosuggestion. Daily repetition of purpose until the subconscious accepts it as law. The one meditates, the other affirms. Both are aligning the same mechanism. Wealth, then, is not a chase but a calibration. The rich are not lucky, they are aligned. They have trained their subconscious to interpret opportunity where others see threat, to act where others freeze, to persist where others despair. The Stoic trains himself to remain rational amidst chaos. Hill trains himself to remain faithful amidst doubt. The result is identical, coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions vibrate in coherence, the world responds with precision. It is not magic, it is physics, psychological, spiritual, universal. Consider the law of cause and effect. Every Stoic I see reveres it. Every success philosopher builds upon it. Nothing happens without reason. Every effect traces back to a mental cause. The Stoic accepts this law to remain tranquil. It could not have been otherwise, he says, because he knows every moment is the outcome of a previous thought or choice. Hill teaches the same law as the foundation of responsibility. If you can think it, you can create it. The first frees the mind from resentment. The second empowers it toward intention. Together they teach the complete mastery of fate, accept what is, and shape what will be. To the untrained mind, this sounds contradictory. How can one both accept and create? But wisdom lies in the paradox. Acceptance is not surrender, it is acknowledgement of law. Creation is not rebellion, it is cooperation with law. The Stoic aligns his will to nature. Hill aligns his will to infinite intelligence. The wise man sees that these are the same thing, to live in harmony with the universal mind that governs all creation. You do not force reality, you cooperate with it. You direct the river by shaping the banks, not by shouting at the water. The subconscious is the river. Your thoughts are the banks. The Stoic carves them with discipline. Hill carves them with desire. The more consistent the carving, the stronger the current becomes. And one day the flow of life moves exactly where you intended, not because you demanded it, but because you designed it. That is the secret of manifestation, intention disciplined by stillness. Imagine your subconscious as fertile soil. Every thought is a seed. Every emotion is water. Most people plant confusion, then wonder why weeds grow faster than fruit. They speak of scarcity while desiring abundance. They fear failure while craving success. The soil does not discriminate, it grows whatever you plant consistently. The Stoic plants clarity by thinking only of what he can control. Hill plants conviction by speaking only of what he desires. Together they cultivate a garden of inevitability. Understand this, belief is not optimism. It is not the shallow hope of positive thinking. Belief is structured emotion, conviction disciplined by reason. The Stoic purifies belief by removing fear. Hill intensifies it by feeding faith. Both remove contradiction, because contradiction weakens energy. The mind that believes two opposing things cannot move forward. You cannot say, I will succeed while secretly fearing failure. Your subconscious will interpret hesitation as command. The universe does not grant what you wish, it reflects what you truly believe. The Stoic therefore cleanses the mind of illusion. He examines every thought as if it were a soldier entering the gates of Rome. Is this under my control? Is this useful? Does this serve virtue? Hill does the same in his own way. Does this thought align with my definite purpose? Does it feed faith or fear? Both understand that mental hygiene precedes fortune. You cannot attract clarity from a mind polluted with doubt. The most successful individuals in history, emperors, inventors, builders, sages, were not merely doers, they were believers. They understood the metaphysical law that faith precedes form. Every empire, every discovery, every revolution began as an invisible conviction held long enough to solidify into matter. That is why Hill insisted, faith is the only known antidote for failure. And the Stoic agreed in his own language, if it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. Both were describing the same strength, the refusal to let external conditions redefine internal certainty. Faith and detachment are not opposites, they are partners. Faith gives direction, detachment gives stability. The Stoic remains indifferent to outcomes because his peace is internal. Hill remains obsessed with vision because his creation is internal. The merging of both creates the ultimate balance. Desire without dependence. You can want something deeply, pursue it completely, and yet remain free from the poison of needing it. That is the highest state of wealth, for dependency is the root of all poverty. Dependency on outcome enslaves the mind. You become reactive, anxious, driven not by purpose but by desperation. The Stoic cures this by removing attachment. He says, do your duty and let nature handle the rest. Hill cures it by strengthening faith. He says, act as though it were impossible to fail. Both prescriptions lead to the same result, emotional independence, and emotional independence is financial independence in its purest form. Because once your emotions are stable, your decisions become consistent, and consistent decisions compound into fortune. You cannot master wealth until you master meaning. The Stoic assigns meaning rationally. This is neither good nor bad, it simply is. Hill assigns meaning intentionally. This serves my purpose. In both cases, meaning is not left to chance. The average man lets the world define what events mean. The master defines it himself. That act of definition is creation itself. Every interpretation shapes the next action, and every action reshapes the world. Thus, manifestation is not some mystical process of attraction. It is the disciplined art of interpretation. You see, the Stoic and the achiever both understand that the mind creates continuity where chaos appears. When you interpret adversity as guidance instead of punishment, you redirect the subconscious signal from fear to faith. You tell the universe, I am still in control, and it responds accordingly. The outer world bends subtly toward your internal conviction. Coincidences increase. Opportunities align. Time itself seems to favor your discipline. That is not luck. It is the harmonization of cause and effect under the frequency of mastery. But beware, belief without virtue is arrogance, and detachment without vision is apathy. The Stoic avoids arrogance by humility before nature. Hill avoids apathy by devotion to purpose. Both walk a razor's edge, too much emotion, and you are consumed, too little, and you stagnate. Balance is the mark of enlightenment. It is not the absence of extremes, but their perfect proportion. Fire and silence, faith and logic, ambition and serenity, the alchemy of opposites that creates kings, philosophers, and creators alike. There is a deeper secret within the subconscious law. Repetition is not enough. Emotion must be sincere. The Stoic achieves sincerity through alignment with reason. Hill achieves it through alignment with desire. When what you think, feel, and do become one, you enter the zone of inevitability. You are no longer hoping to succeed. You are expressing what you already are. You must realize that the subconscious mind communicates not in words but in emotional tone. You can say, I am rich 1,000 times, but if you feel scarcity, your signal is scarcity. The Stoic therefore purifies feeling through discipline. Hill amplifies feeling through faith. The first cleans the channel, the second broadcasts the message. Manifestation fails only when the channel is distorted or the signal weak. When both are aligned, reality moves with mathematical precision. And what a failure! The Stoic would smile. It is only perception. Hill would nod. Temporary D. Effete. The subconscious does not interpret failure as tragedy unless you feed it that meaning. To the trained mind, failure is merely unrefined data. The Stoic extracts wisdom, the achiever extracts strategy. Both use it to refine vibration. Thus, failure becomes fuel, a reordering of thought toward greater coherence. It is in this sense that wealth becomes a spiritual discipline. The pursuit of money is meaningless unless it becomes a mirror for mastery. Every fluctuation in fortune tests your faith, your detachment, your clarity. The Stoic welcomes these fluctuations as teachers. Hill uses them as training. Both remain faithful to the unseen law that inner order precedes outer abundance. You must begin to see belief as a physical force. Every sustained conviction generates patterns of action, emotion, and perception that shape your material world. The Stoic teaches belief in virtue. Hill teaches belief in purpose. When virtue and purpose merge, belief becomes unbreakable. You no longer need external validation, for your confidence comes from alignment, not applause. The subconscious, in its obedience, rewards such alignment ruthlessly. It will open doors that logic cannot explain, orchestrate coincidences that appear miraculous. But these are not miracles. They are mathematics of faith. The Stoic does not marvel, he expected order. Hill does not boast, he expected manifestation. Both understand that what others call miracles are simply the byproducts of mastery applied with consistency. So you must train your mind not only to think clearly, but to believe coherently. The Stoic practices daily reflection, a review of thought and behavior. Hill practices daily affirmation, a reinforcement of desire and faith. These are not different rituals, they are two halves of one discipline, morning alignment, evening accountability. Every day becomes a cycle of programming, NG and purification, thought, action, reflection, correction, the eternal rhythm of creation. As you continue this discipline, a transformation occurs. The world's chaos no longer stirs you, success no longer intoxicates you. You begin to sense a deeper current guiding all motion, an intelligence that seems to reward precision of mind and purity of heart. You move not with fear, but with knowing. Your thoughts begin to feel heavier, as if they carry gravity. People respond to your energy before you speak. Circumstances rearrange themselves quietly, efficiently, faithfully. You are not forcing outcomes anymore. You are allowing law to fulfill itself through you. This is the final stage of belief, when faith becomes fact before the eyes see it. The Stoic calls it serenity. Hill calls it transmutation. It is the point where thought and reality become indistinguishable, because the gap between them has been erased by discipline. You no longer visualize, you witness. You no longer affirm. At this stage, wealth is no longer a pursuit but a state of being. You carry it within, calm, deliberate, powerful. Money, opportunity, recognition. These are merely reflections of your internal empire. The Stoics' virtue and Hill's faith have merged into one energy, the energy of inevitability. What others chase, you attract. What others fear, you transform. You have become the cause itself. And when you reach this understanding, silence becomes your greatest tool. You no longer explain yourself. You no longer argue for your dreams. You live them quietly, with the dignity of one who knows the law too deeply to doubt it. For in the end, success is not the applause of the world. It is the soundless certainty within you that nothing external can disturb. That is the Stoic wealth. To be rich not because you possess much, but because nothing possesses you. And that is the Hillian success, to create not because you must prove, but because you cannot help but express. Together they form the supreme code of prosperity: mastery in thought, purity in feeling, constancy in faith. The rest is gravity. There is a moment in every seeker's journey when noise becomes unbearable, when the mind begins to crave silence not as escape but as refinement. Solitude stops feeling like loneliness and starts feeling like access. Access to the raw architecture of thought, to the workshop of destiny itself. The Stoics retreated into this silence to discipline perception. Napoleon Hill entered it to communicate with the infinite intelligence. Both knew that power is born where distraction dies. The modern mind fears stillness because it reveals itself. It fears what it will hear when the outer clamor fades. Yet the Stoic walks into that quiet deliberately, like a warrior into training. He knows the mind cannot be commanded by noise. He strips away the chatter, the comparisons, the digital pulse of a world obsessed with approval. He closes the door not to the world, but to distortion. In solitude, he meets his own reflection, raw, unsweetened, unfiltered, and from that encounter he builds authority. Hill called solitude the hour of imagination, the time when thought becomes blueprint. He urged men to withdraw daily, to think clearly about what they want and why. But his solitude was not passive daydreaming. It was deliberate communion. He spoke to the unseen forces of mind as one speaks to partners in enterprise. Infinite intelligence, he would say in his writings, guide my thoughts. The Stoic would never invoke such language, yet he practiced the same ritual. He questioned himself before dawn, dissected emotion, examined motive. 2 languages, 1 ritual, self-conversation as creation. Power has always demanded isolation, not because the world is evil, but because influence dilutes when exposed too soon. The seed grows strongest underground, unseen, protected from commentary. Every great vision is like that. It must be conceived in secret, nourished in silence, shielded from the premature opinions of those who cannot yet see it. The Stoic hides not to avoid life, but to prepare for it. Hill hides to design it. Together they reveal a sacred order. Withdrawal precedes revelation. In solitude, you discover the hierarchy of your desires. You realize how many of them are borrowed, echoes of advertisement, shadows of envy, voices of the crowd disguised as your own. The Stoic cleanses these impostors through reason. He asks, is this necessary? Is this within my control? Hill cleanses them through purpose. He asks, does this serve my definite chief aim? When both filters are applied, desire becomes diamond. Pure, sharp, indestructible. It no longer burns chaotically, it cuts precisely. Desire itself is not the enemy. It is the spark of motion, but unrefined desire blinds, while disciplined desire builds empires. The Stoic disciplines desire by focusing it on virtue, the excellence of character. Hill disciplines it by focusing it on creative purpose, the excellence of contribution. One polishes the soul, The other expands civilization. The fusion of both produces what might be called sacred ambition, the pursuit of external greatness through internal order. You must learn to treat desire like sacred fire, approach it with reverence, control its oxygen, and it will warm entire kingdoms. Neglect it or worship it, and it consumes you. Stoic restraint is not suppression, it is containment. It is the art of holding flame in the palm without burning. Hill's passion is not recklessness, it is directed heat, the temperature at which vision melts limitation. Together they teach that wealth is not the accumulation of things, but the direction of energy. Solitude refines that energy. The longer you spend alone with purpose, the more clearly you begin to sense the pattern behind events. What seemed random begins to reveal design. People appear at exact moments, obstacles arrange themselves as instructions, timing synchronizes. This is not mysticism, it is perception sharpened to law. The Stoic would call it living in accordance with nature. Hill would call it tuning to the vibration of success. In both cases, you have stopped fighting the river and started steering with it, but the test of solitude is brutal. Without distraction, the mind will confront its own chaos. It will throw memories, fears, guilt, everything buried under motion. The untrained flee from this storm, turning back to noise for comfort. The disciplined remain. They endure the internal weather until calm returns, and when it does, they emerge purified. The Stoic calls this mastering impression. Hill calls it mastering the subconscious. It is the same crucible, sitting still until illusion burns away. And when it burns away, clarity appears, not as vision, but as knowing. You no longer wonder whether your dream is possible. You know. You have seen it too clearly within to doubt it without. That is the birth of destiny, when the mind stops seeking permission from evidence. The Stoic would describe it as alignment with reason. Hill would call it faith transformed into certainty. In both, emotion yields to conviction. Desire, now purified, becomes destiny's compass. It no longer screams, it guides, it whispers directions, not demands. The Stoic listens for its rational chord. Hill listens for its emotional resonance. When both chords harmonize, movement becomes effortless. Action no longer feels like strain, but like obedience to something higher. You are not forcing, you are fulfilling. To the observer, such a person seems chosen. Opportunities fall into his path. Decisions appear obvious. Confidence radiates quietly. But the truth is simpler. He has eliminated inner conflict. His mind, heart, and action no longer debate. They move as one instrument tuned to law. That is why Stoicism's self-command and Hill's definiteness of purpose are two sides of the same mastery. One silences inner contradiction, the other channels it into creation. There is a phrase from Seneca, "He who is brave is free." Freedom to the Stoic is not political but psychological, freedom from the tyranny of impulse. Hill would agree, adding that freedom from doubt is the beginning of riches. Combine them and the equation is complete. Freedom from inner disturbance equals dominion over outer reality. To reach this level, you must practice soul. Etude not as withdrawal, but as training. Each morning before the world intrudes, sit with your purpose. Examine it, feel it, question it with Stoic logic. Is it just? Is it worthy? Is it within reason? Then ignite it with Hill's emotion. See it, believe it, feel it is done. This dual meditation sculpts the subconscious into a perfect servant. Thought becomes blueprint. Emotion becomes energy. And day by day, your invisible design hardens into visible form. But beware the subtle enemy that appears here, pride. As results manifest, as wealth begins to flow, the ego whispers ownership. I did this, it says, and in that moment, alignment begins to fracture. The Stoic prevents this through humility, remembrance that all fortune is temporary. Hill prevents it through gratitude, recognition that he is a conduit of universal intelligence, not its origin. You must adopt both safeguards. For pride is the great corruption of creation. It shifts focus from law to self, from cause to claim, and the flow ceases. Humility does not diminish power, it anchors it. The Stoic bows to nature not out of weakness, but wisdom. Hill gives thanks not out of ritual, but resonance. Gratitude stabilizes frequency. Humility maintains perspective. Together they ensure that power serves rather than enslaves. The man who remains humble amidst abundance becomes unstoppable because nothing external can unbalance him. Power, when properly understood, is quiet. The loud seek validation, the silent command it. The Stoic's serenity and Hill's faith both generate this quiet authority, a presence that requires no performance. It is felt before it is seen, believed before it is spoken. This is the architecture of true power, invisible pillars of self-command supporting visible achievements. To construct those pillars, you must pour discipline into every detail of life. The Stoic trains the small things, posture, speech, thought. Hill trains the small actions, calls, notes, habits. Both understand that excellence is fractal. How you do one thing is how you do all. The universe observes precision and multiplies it. Sloppiness in thought manifests as disorder in fortune. Discipline in detail magnetizes order in circumstance. Thus, wealth is not an act of ambition but of craftsmanship. There is also loneliness in mastery. Few will understand the quiet grind of the one who walks between Stoic virtue and entrepreneurial fire. They will call you detached, obsessed, perhaps even cold. Let them. The path of synthesis has always been misunderstood. You are not meant to be understood, you are meant to be aligned. Hill wrote of the mastermind, a union of minds vibrating in harmony. The Stoic finds that harmony within himself first. When you merge inner dialogue into agreement, you become your own mastermind. At times, solitude will feel like exile. Results will delay, voices of doubt will echo. That is when the Stoic whispers, amor fati, love your fate. Do not merely endure it, embrace it as the very clay from which strength is molded. Hill echoes, every adversity carries the seed of an equal or greater benefit. When you fuse these truths, pain becomes raw material for progress. You stop resisting the difficult seasons, you mine them for power. In that mining, something irreversible happens. You begin to sense that wealth is not ahead but within. You stop chasing outcomes and start cultivating capacity. You measure progress not by numbers but by composure. You find pleasure in precision, peace in persistence. Money, when it comes, feels secondary, almost incidental, a byproduct of harmony. That is the paradox of mastery. The less you need, the more you attract. As solitude deepens, you begin to see through illusions that once governed you. Praise loses its intoxication, criticism loses its sting. You no longer crave to impress because you have impressed upon yourself a standard higher than applause. The Stoic calls this living by principle. Hill calls it self-confidence. Both free you from the emotional economy of the crowd. The richest wealth is autonomy, to move through the world guided only by inner law. And yet autonomy without purpose decays into isolation. The Stoic remains engaged with society. He serves through example. Hill insists that riches must benefit others to endure. Thus the circle closes. Solitude refines you, but service completes you. You retreat to gather strength, then return to distribute it. In that rhythm, wealth becomes cyclical. Inflow of wisdom, outflow of value. Nature. When solitude ripens into wisdom, the next step is emergence. The Stoic does not remain in his chamber forever. The philosopher must become soldier. The thinker must become builder. Hill, too, warns that thought without action is self-hypnosis. The moment comes when inner mastery demands outer expression. What was rehearsed in silence must now be demonstrated in motion. Yet, even in motion, the stillness remains. True activity is not agitation, but precise execution guided by inner calm. Leadership begins here in the return from solitude bearing clarity. The Stoic leads by example through composure. Hill leads through inspiration, through belief contagious enough to awaken others. But both know that leadership is not domination. It is alignment extended outward. To lead is to embody order so clearly that others instinctively synchronize with it. Authority, therefore, is not demanded, it is radiated. The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire yet wrote nightly to himself as a student. Hill, in his interviews with the powerful, noticed the same humility. The greatest leaders viewed themselves as perpetual learners, servants of a higher cause. This fusion of power and service is the apex of wealth's philosophy. When ambition becomes contribution, fortune stabilizes. The universe trusts the one who intends to distribute, not hoard. But to lead others, you must first lead the invisible nations within: fear, doubt, pride, laziness. These are your provinces, forever testing allegiance. The Stoic governs them through law, reason, reflection, restraint. Hill governs them through purpose. Clarity, confidence, conviction. The inner government must be absolute, otherwise rebellion breaks out in the form of self-sabotage. When discipline rules, every faculty of mind becomes a loyal citizen serving destiny. Understand that leadership is not charisma, it is consistency. The Stoic earns loyalty by reliability. Hill earns it by vision. Combine both and you become inevitable, steady in presence, luminous in purpose. People sense stability and gravitate to it, for stability is rare in a world addicted to fluctuation. That is why the calm-driven achieve more than the frantic. Chaos cannot cooperate with itself, but order multiplies. The transformation of desire into destiny is the final stage of mastery. It happens quietly, almost invisibly. One morning you awaken and realize you no longer chase, you simply move. The desire that once ached now flows through every gesture. It has become identity. Hill would call this the autopilot of success, the stage where subconscious momentum carries you. The Stoic would describe it as living according to nature, action without inner resistance. Both mean the same, effort transmuted into essence. At this point, wealth no longer tests you, it serves you, because the same discipline that attracted it now sustains it. The Stoic keeps possessions light upon the soul. Hill keeps them productive for vision. You no longer fear loss, for you have learned regeneration. If all vanished, you could rebuild, because the real fortune is structural. It lives in your habits, your focus, your calm. This is the serenity that terrifies lesser minds, the unshakable confidence of one who knows he carries the blueprint within. Even love and human relation transform under this discipline. The Stoic practices affection without attachment. Hill practices partnership through shared aim. You begin to choose companions not by comfort, but by coherence. Conversations shrink in number, but grow in depth. The energy you once scattered across countless acquaintances now concentrates into alliances of purpose. This concentration of association multiplies influence. Your circle becomes a mirror of your vibration. From this altitude, problems appear smaller, patterns clearer. You start to see how each past hardship was instruction. The betrayals taught discernment. The delays taught patience. The losses taught regeneration. The Stoic records these lessons as gratitude. Hill records them as data. Both build libraries of wisdom instead of walls of regret. Nothing is wasted in such a mind. Everything is recycled into strength. And yet, the wise never relax into complacency. They treat comfort as signal to expand, not rest. The Stoic trains continuously, polishing perception. Hill reinvents continuously, expanding possibility. Stagnation is the enemy of spirit. The moment you stop refining, decay begins, not in possessions, but in perspective. Therefore, progress must become devotion, a daily offering of effort to the altar of potential. There will be moments when success isolates you again, when those around cannot understand your detachment. Remember then the purpose of the silence that forged you. Do not dilute your clarity for companionship. Instead, lead quietly. Influence through example, not explanation. Hill taught that the greatest persuasion is demonstration. The Stoic would call it virtue displayed. You owe no defense for excellence. Your peace will speak louder than argument. True destiny is rhythm, not race. The Stoic moves by reason's tempo. Hill moves by imagination's pulse. The synthesis is flow, momentum aligned with meaning. You begin to notice that decisions once difficult now arise effortlessly. Intuition and logic cooperate. This is not luck, it is the byproduct of long alignment, years of disciplined thought collapsing time. What others call instinct is merely experience organized by faith. Eventually, even the concept of getting rich feels primitive compared with what you have become. Money remains, but meaning transcends it. The Stoic finds joy in integrity, Hill in impact. You begin to measure wealth and influence, peace and creative freedom. You trade accumulation for architecture, building systems, people, ideas that outlive you. Immortality of impact replaces the anxiety of possession. This is the evolution of desire, from wanting to winning, from winning to witnessing. And so you lead, quietly, firmly, with a smile that knows storms cannot touch the foundation anymore. You have merged the calm of the philosopher with the fire of the creator. You have learned to sit in stillness without stagnating, to move without frenzy, to own without attachment. You have become wealth itself, consciousness ordered, purpose burning, emotion disciplined. The Stoic in you governs, the Hillian in you expands. Together they form the archetype of the master. When future generations read your trace, they will not merely see numbers or titles, they will feel the resonance of your mind, the still pulse of someone who proved that serenity and success are not enemies but twins. They will sense in your legacy a message older than empires, that the highest riches are found where reason and faith clasp hands, where silence teaches ambition how to speak. And as dusk falls on your life, you will look upon what you built, not the structures or balances, but the order you etched into the human story. And you will understand what both Marcus Aurelius and Napoleon Hill were pointing toward from opposite directions, that the disciplined mind is the real kingdom, and wealth is only its shadow. Power and success, when they reach a certain threshold, are no longer measured by the world, but by the inner mind. That is when the test begins, the dark trial that separates the transient from the eternal, the impulsive from the disciplined. Desire, once sharpened into purpose, begins to flicker with temptation. It is easy to mistake momentum for mastery, to confuse influence for omnipotence. The Stoic warns that even virtue can become vice when pride infiltrates, and Hill cautions that faith, when untethered from reason, becomes folly. The mind now walks a tightrope suspended above all illusion, where one misstep can dismantle the carefully constructed empire of both wealth and soul. Temptation does not roar, it whispers. The world will offer you shortcuts, applauses, and distractions in the guise of opportunity. Riches arrive, and suddenly every choice seems permissible, every boundary negotiable. The untrained will bend, break, and scatter. The disciplined, however, sees the trap. The Stoic reflects, is this action within reason? Does it corrupt my inner law? Hill adds, does this choice reinforce my definite purpose or dilute it? The fusion of these questions creates a filter through which nothing but aligned action can pass. Here lies the secret: your alignment must become invisible to temptation, not reactive to it. Loss enters next. The universe has a strange symmetry. As ascent continues, the forces of resistance increase. Friends betray, markets crash, empires wobble. The ego, comfortable in its self-assurance, suddenly trembles. Yet the Stoic meets loss with serenity, whispering, what is lost was never mine, what remains is under my control. Hill meets loss with analysis and renewed faith, seeing setbacks as hidden instructions. Together, they form a perfect lens. Adversity is both mirror and teacher. What is shattered is never truly external, it is a measure of internal resolve. Here lies the paradox of transcendence. The deeper your mastery, the heavier the temptation, the greater the loss, the sharper the ego's test. But these are the exact instruments of refinement. Like the blacksmith's fire, they strip away rust, revealing the inner architecture of self. The Stoic calls it endurance, Hill calls it persistence. Together, they insist that the soul must be seasoned in adversity before it can hold abundance without corruption. Temptation, loss, and ego death are not punishment, they are calibration. The mind's alignment is tested until it vibrates at a frequency of inevitability. Every distraction resisted, every insult endured, every opportunity correctly discerned adds weight to the invisible scale. Eventually, you discover that external outcomes matter less than internal fidelity. The currency of power is no longer applause or acquisition. It is unbroken focus, composure, and inner law. Ego death is the strangest yet most profound teacher. You begin to witness your own mind, your own identity, without flinching. The Stoic examines every thought, every desire, every prideful impulse, stripping away the illusion of self-importance. Hill channels the same observation into purpose. Is this thought, this action, this energy aligned with my definite chief aim? When both disciplines converge, identity is no longer a cage but a tool. Selfhood is refined, precise, and free. The ego becomes servant, not tyrant. At this stage, fear dissolves into clarity. No circumstance, no criticism, no misfortune can sway you because you have recognized the root of all disturbance, attachment. The Stoic teaches that the world contains neither good nor evil, only perception. Hill teaches that what the mind believes, it creates. The fusion is simple yet terrifying in its power. When internal perception is sovereign, the outer world becomes malleable. Loss is data, gain is instrument, fear is illusion. Desire transforms into discipline. No longer frantic or desperate, it moves like water through a canal, guided but unstoppable. Temptation becomes a T. Est, not a diversion. Every challenge encountered is an opportunity to reassert command over the subconscious. You realize that you no longer need external validation. Proof lies within your ability to act without inner contradiction. This is transcendence, when ambition is no longer a plea to the universe, but a statement of fact, silently executed. The mind reaches a stage where time bends to alignment. Past failures lose their sting. Past victories lose their seduction. You operate from a center of gravity invisible to the world, yet palpable to every observer. Hill's definite chief aim and the Stoics' rational will are now one directive. Every action is deliberate, every thought calibrated, every response measured. The world perceives effortlessness, but you know it is relentless discipline. Solitude, which once nurtured clarity, now becomes your workshop of testing. Every relationship, every business deal, every encounter is analyzed not with suspicion, but with precision. The Stoic examines motive, Hill examines outcome. Together, they create a lens capable of dissecting reality without losing composure. This lens ensures that no temptation, no loss, and no ego can derail the trajectory. The river of life may surge, but your channel is fixed and unbreakable. Spiritual architecture begins to form. You understand that every ambition, every accumulation, every interaction is a brick in a structure far larger than yourself. The Stoic sees the blueprint in virtue, Hill sees it in purpose. The bricks must be laid with precision, the foundation must be unshakable. A single impulsive act can compromise the entire edifice. Mastery, therefore, is no longer measured by speed or volume of action, but by alignment in every detail. Fear of insignificance vanishes because you realize that your true impact is invisible. Influence flows quietly, subtly, without fanfare. Stoic calls this moral power, Hill calls it creative momentum. Both recognize that the greatest force in life is invisible and yet inevitable. The disciplined mind expressed through consistent action. Money, status, and recognition are shadows, the real substance is law within. And yet a strange humility emerges. The more control you exert internally, the less you need to assert externally. The Stoic bows to fate not out of resignation but wisdom. Hill bows to infinite intelligence not out of superstition but strategy. Ego is no longer concerned with possession or validation. It is concerned only with execution and alignment. This is the quiet terror of mastery. Others see calm, yet beneath it flows unrelenting power. As you continue, the threshold between vision and reality thins. The disciplined desire now moves with inevitability, almost as if the universe has conspired to obey it. This is no accident. It is the consequence of countless repetitions of clarity, belief, and deliberate action. The Stoics' serenity and Hill's faith are no longer separate practices. They are fused into a single law governing both mind and circumstance. The mind, once chaotic, now hums with purpose. Every decision feels preordained, yet every step is conscious. There is no hesitation, no doubt, no hesitation-driven procrastination. You feel the pulse of inevitability in your veins, the rhythm of order in your breath, every temptation resisted, every loss endured, every ego conquered, has distilled you into an instrument capable of manifesting destiny. And so the first half of the final trial concludes. You are tempered by solitude, tested by temptation, hardened by loss, purified by ego death. The next stage awaits in the second half, the culmination of this process, where transcendence matures into complete mastery and the mind, body, and spirit converge to produce the final FO. RM of power, wealth, and indomitable presence. The second half of this crucible begins with stillness in motion. You have endured the tests of temptation, the jarring lessons of loss, the silent disassembly of ego, and now, in the quiet aftermath, you sense the emergence of a higher self, one that has learned to act without attachment, to desire without desperation, to see without distortion. This is the stage where the Stoic and Hillian disciplines converge fully. Mastery is no longer an aspiration, but a presence, not a concept. but a palpable force within you. Transcendence is not decoration, it is architecture. Every temptation that was resisted, every loss that was endured, every ego that was tempered has built internal scaffolding, a framework invisible to the world yet structurally indispensable. You move through life like a shadow in a storm. Nothing sways you, nothing surprises you, nothing intimidates you. This is the discipline of inevitability. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions are synchronized, a trinity of precision that manifests external order as a natural consequence. You realize that the external world is neither adversary nor ally. It is raw material, reflection of the inner law. The Stoic sees events as neutral, shaped only by interpretation. Hill sees circumstances as malleable, shaped only by perception and disciplined action. The fusion produces a remarkable truth. Mastery is not about controlling the world, but about controlling the lens through which the world appears. This lens refracts chaos into clarity, pressure into opportunity, and loss into insight. Every obstacle now functions as both teacher and tool. Betrayal instructs discernment. Failure instructs persistence. Misfortune instructs composure. Each is a node in the invisible network of your internal universe, connecting thought to consequence with absolute fidelity. You begin to see patterns where others see random chaos. Timing appears orchestrated. Synchronicity feels intentional. The Stoic would say you are living in harmony with nature. Hill would say you have aligned with infinite intelligence. Both are correct, for both describe the same hidden mechanics of cause and effect executed through disciplined perception. Ego, finally subdued, becomes an instrument rather than an obstruction. You act not to impress, not to dominate, not to accumulate status, but to execute law within and manifest vision without. Pride no longer distorts, ambition no longer blinds. The energy once dissipated in reaction and self-justification now channels directly into creation. This is the apex of psychological mastery. The self becomes precise, aligned, and potent, capable of bending circumstance without losing equilibrium. You sense that wealth, power, influence, and even love are reflections of internal coherence. Nothing external can corrupt what has been disciplined internally. The Stoic teaches that possessions are transient. Hill teaches that wealth is a byproduct of aligned action. You now inhabit both truths simultaneously. Accumulation is welcomed, yet it cannot destabilize the order within. This is the ultimate freedom, to move through the world with power yet remain untouched, unmoved by forces that sway the unmastered. Time itself appears differently. Each decision resonates, each action compounds. The mind recognizes the long arc, seeing beyond the immediate reward or loss. Short-term setbacks are mere ripples. Long-term alignment is the river. The Stoic calls this perspective, Hill calls it definiteness of purpose, extended across years. You have internalized both. Every move is calculated, every intention pure, every motion deliberate. The external world obeys not out of fear or manipulation, but because it mirrors the discipline within. At this stage, you begin to understand the architecture of destiny. Desire, once raw and chaotic, has transformed into structured momentum. Every goal, every intention, every vision is now nested within the scaffolding of inner law. There is no hesitation, there is no contradiction. You act as if the universe itself conspires to obey your alignment, and indeed it does, because your internal order has become a gravitational field for circumstance. This is where solitude and social action merge. You have cultivated silence and reflection, but now you project discipline outward. The Stoic guides by example. Hill inspires by presence. People feel your certainty. They sense your alignment. Influence multiplies effortlessly. Yet, unlike the unmastered, you do not cling to control. You remain unattached to outcomes, calm in the face of fortune and misfortune alike. This is the paradox of ultimate mastery. You move, you build, you create, and yet nothing can perturb your internal law. Spiritual architecture now manifests as a continuum, a living, breathing system of thought, intention, and execution. Every habit, every reflection, every repetition of belief has stacked into an internal fortress. The Stoic's rational mind governs. Hill's imaginative mind propels. Together they form a synthesis that is unstoppable, invisible, inevitable. You act as both architect and builder, both observer and operator. Success in every dimension flows naturally because your internal mechanics are flawless. The trials of ego death, loss, and temptation now appear not as hardships but as instruments of ascension. You can trace their purpose with absolute clarity. Each pain was a lesson in fidelity, each challenge a calibration, each risk a crucible. The Stoic whispers that all events are opportunities to exercise virtue. Hill whispers that every setback carries the seed of greater guile. When merged, they become a law that the mind obeys instinctively. The unmastered suffer from circumstance. The mastered exploit circumstance. And here emerges a terrifying yet exhilarating truth. You are no longer governed by the world. Your internal gravity dictates motion. Your alignment dictates outcomes. The mind that has endured temptation, survived loss, and disarmed ego now moves with unerring certainty. This is the state that the Stoics revered and Hill sought, the individual whose internal order cannot be shaken, whose faith cannot be corrupted, whose desire flows with disciplined inevitability. This is also the stage of final discernment. Every choice is measured not by desire alone, but by alignment. Opportunities, relationships, acquisitions, all are filtered through the twin lenses of virtue and purpose. The world may attempt to seduce you into misalignment, but your internal calibration rejects it automatically. Even wealth cannot seduce nor status corrupt because the foundations of your mind are now unassailable. You operate as an apex system of action and perception, and yet there is still grace. The Stoic reminds you that mastery is not perfection but endurance. Hill reminds you that creation is not coercion but alignment. Together they create a paradoxical humility. The more power you hold, the less you need to display it. Authority becomes silent. Influence becomes natural, success becomes inevitable. But the mind remains disciplined, serene, and free. This is transcendence realized, desire disciplined, ego dissolved, internal law absolute, action inevitable. From this vantage, wealth is seen in a new light. Not as currency, not as fame, not as external accumulation, but as a mirror of the internal empire. Power becomes the reflection of discipline, influence the echo of alignment, opportunity the outcome of coherent thought. You know long. Ere chase or grasp you act, and the world moves in response. This is the final alchemy, intention transformed into consequence without effort, without friction, without resistance. And now, having navigated temptation, loss, and ego death, having mastered solitude, discipline, and desire, you are ready for the final integration. The step where all lessons converge into a singular force of transformation, where the audience, the aspirant, the seeker, finally reaches the threshold of actionable mastery. Have you ever paused long enough to ask yourself what you truly want? Not the fleeting cravings, not the applause of the world, not the hollow echoes of validation, but the singular, raw desire that sits at the core of your being, unspoken and unshakable. This is the question that opens the final threshold. If you cannot answer it, all guidance, all philosophy, all ambition becomes noise. The Stoic asks it as a matter of reason, what is within my control and how should I govern it? Napoleon Hill asks it as a matter of destiny. What is my definite chief aim and how shall I command the forces of mind to manifest it? Both questions converge here in this silent crucible of choice. You stand at the edge of everything you could become, and the world waits to see if you will leap or recoil. You have already navigated solitude and temptation, endured loss, faced ego death, and aligned desire with purpose. You have built the invisible infrastructure of mastery, the architecture of the mind. Yet this is not the conclusion. It is the moment of ignition. The Stoic whispers that action is the true measure of virtue. Hill whispers that belief without execution is nothing but illusion. Now you must act. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, but now. Every moment of hesitation dilutes power. Every deferred step postpones destiny. Look at the world around you. Every individual you see, every enterprise, every system, every fortune exists because someone first mastered themselves. They did not wait for permission, for alignment of stars, or for perfect clarity. They acted from the still point within. from a mind disciplined, calm, and singularly devoted. You have reached that still point. Do you feel it? The quiet pulse of inevitability beneath the surface of thought, the steady rhythm that knows no fear? That is your signal. That is the internal law ready to externalize. You are no longer prey to impulse. The Stoic has trained you to perceive without distortion, to accept without resistance, to respond with virtue. Napoleon Hill has trained you to harness thought, to convert belief into magnetism, to see impossibility as temporary, malleable, and submissive to the mind that wills it. Now synthesis demands more than perception. It demands manifestation. All the philosophy, all the discipline, all the preparation is worthless without execution. The mind alone does not create reality. The disciplined mind in action does. Imagine for a moment that every fear you have held, every hesitation, every shadow of doubt is a mirror. Look into it. You will see yourself not as fragile, not as limited, but as already competent, already aligned, already capable. The Stoic reminds you that no external circumstance can destroy inner order. Hill reminds you that every thought, every idea, every visualization imprinted on the subconscious is a seed ready to sprout. Combine these truths. Stand and act from the knowledge that the unseen forces of the universe respond to clarity, conviction, and disciplined execution. Do not misunderstand this call. It is not sentimental. It is not motivational fluff. It is a declaration of law. The universe is neither benevolent nor cruel. It is responsive. It mirrors precision, alignment, and unwavering attention. The untrained will falter because they rely on chance. The mastered will prevail because they rely on principle. You are no longer untrained. You have walked through fire, silence, temptation, and reflection. Your mind is a fortress, your desire a compass, your action a decree. Now take the next step. You have imagined it, refined it, disciplined it. You have faced fear, endured loss, mastered ego, and aligned desire. Do not stop. Action is not merely movement. It is the projection of inner order into the chaos of reality. Step into it deliberately, with faith as sharp as reason, with courage as quiet as composure, with persistence as unyielding as the laws you have internalized. This is no ordinary moment. It is the hinge of destiny. The difference between potential and manifestation is simple: execution. Observe how the world reacts. Doors will open, challenges will appear, allies will come, and obstacles will rise. None of this is coincidence. Every element aligns with the frequency you have calibrated internally. The Stoic sees opportunity in challenge. Hill sees potential in circumstance. Together they teach that life is not random. It is a reflection of internal law. The quality of your action, the precision of your thought, the discipline of your desire, these dictate what unfolds. Execution is now your conduit, and your mind is sovereign. Let the fire of desire and the calm of reason coexist in harmony. The Stoic ensures that you do not burn uncontrolled. Hill ensures that your fire illuminates and manifests. Every step is deliberate. Every word, every movement, every decision is a signature of internal mastery. You have become a nexus where philosophy meets strategy, where contemplation meets creation, where vision meets execution. This is the final alchemy of thought and action, the fusion of mental clarity, emotional equilibrium, and absolute purpose. Ask yourself, in the silence between beats of your heart, what will I create with this power? What will I manifest when nothing within me wavers? You have been tempered by solitude, tested by adversity, disciplined by desire, and enlightened by self-mastery. The universe will bend to precision, circumstance will obey alignment. You have reached the point where hesitation is betrayal, inaction is surrender, and doubt is a luxury the mastered cannot afford. This is your sacred charge, not to hoard, not to dominate, not to perform for applause, but to act in accordance with the law you have internalized. Wealth, influence, achievement, they are inevitable consequences of alignment. Your legacy will not be the balance sheet or the accolades. It will be the demonstration of mastery itself, the unwavering presence of one who has harmonized mind, heart, and purpose into a singular force of creation. Do not wait for others to understand. They will not. Do not wait for conditions to be perfect. They will never be. Do not seek comfort or reassurance. Your inner law is your proof. Act. Step forward. Project the force of disciplined desire and serene reason into the world. Every movement, every decision, every breath must be a declaration. I am aligned, I am ready, I am executing my purpose with precision and faith. This is no longer theory, it is inevitability. Feel the gravity of your own potential. Recognize that hesitation dissipates energy. Indecision erodes momentum. Your mind has been trained, your desire disciplined, your ego tempered. Nothing external can shift the foundations you have built within. The Stoic in you holds the calm of unshakable perspective. Hill's vision burns like concentrated light. Step now, and the world becomes clay, molded by clarity, patience, and unwavering execution. Here is the ultimate truth. All the riches, all the successes, all the end. Fluence in the universe are meaningless without mastery of self. Mastery precedes manifestation. Control precedes creation. Discipline precedes destiny. Everything else is derivative, ephemeral, or illusory. You have reached the stage where the internal law cannot be violated, the desire cannot be corrupted, the vision cannot be derailed. Execution is not a choice. It is the mandate of inevitability. And so rise, step into the arena of life with a mind trained by Stoic reason, a heart disciplined by Hillian desire, a soul fortified by adversity. Act decisively, think clearly, endure relentlessly. Let every action echo the invisible architecture of your internal mastery. Do not whisper your intention, embody it. Do not hope for success, command it. You have been tempered in solitude, tested in fire, liberated through discipline, and purified by reflection. Now manifest. This is your sacred threshold. Beyond it lies the life you imagine, the impact you envision, the wealth, freedom, and mastery you cultivated internally. Hesitate no longer. The moment to act is eternal and now. Step, and the universe aligns. Execute, and the impossible becomes inevitable. Walk forward, and the echo of your discipline will ripple across the world. Rise. Command, create, master.